In the first century, the primary sound of life in Judea was the rhythmic clatter of hobnail boots on stone, the constant presence of the Roman military occupation. The people sustained themselves with the prophecy from Ezekiel 37, which promised that God would gather the scattered tribes of Israel and unite them under a single shepherd king. This spiritual hope was quickly funneled into a specific, violent blueprint. Living under the shadow of Roman legions, the population looked for a Messiah who would match Rome's physical force with his own. The people expected a revolutionary military general. This rigid expectation made them blind to any king who didn't arrive with a sword in his hand and an army at his back. While the crowds looked for a warrior, the religious establishment, led by the Pharisees and high priest Caiaphas, watched Jesus' miracles with a different kind of intensity. They didn't see the healings as signs of divinity. Instead, they viewed the growing crowds as a volatile spark that would ignite a Roman crackdown. Their fear was rooted in the preservation of the city. If Jesus incited an uprising, the Roman response would be swift: the total destruction of the nation and the removal of the temple anchoring their political power. Caiaphas eventually voiced the cold logic of the council. If one man died, the nation might be spared the Roman sword. This was a cold, calculated political trade. To protect their material standing and the physical safety of the city, the religious elite chose to eliminate the very truth they claimed to represent. When Jesus finally entered Jerusalem, the streets were choked with a procession of followers, shouting "Hosanna," a cry for immediate salvation. But the visual details of his arrival contradicted the crowd's energy. Instead of the grand, high-bred horse favored by Roman generals, Jesus arrived on a young donkey, a working beast of burden. The crowds ignored the symbol of humility. They threw palm branches and cloaks onto the road, attempting to force Jesus into the role of the conquering hero they had already designed in their minds. Within days, that same crowd would realize he had no intention of leading a military coup. When he failed to meet their earthly demands, the cries of "Hosanna" were replaced by screams for his execution. Public support evaporated the moment the people realized Jesus was following a divine script rather than their personal checklists for political victory. The theological blueprint for this entry is found in Philippians chapter 2. It explains that while Jesus held the authority of the Creator, he refused to use it for personal or political dominance. In this diagram of a standard power hierarchy, the leader sits at the peak. But Jesus inverted the traditional flow of authority. He emptied himself, descending from the top to take the form of a servant at the base. This descent led to the lowest point of human status, the public shame and physical torture of the cross. Spilling his blood in this position established the mechanism for an eternal atonement, addressing the spiritual corruption of humanity rather than its physical oppressors. The crucifixion functioned as a subversive tactical strike. It targeted the root of spiritual death instead of the temporary political enemies the crowds wanted him to fight. The Pharisees killed Jesus to prevent the Romans from destroying their temple. Yet, less than 40 years later, the Roman legions reduced that very building to the rubble seen in these ruins. Caiaphas's plan failed to save the city, but his cynical justification for murder accurately described the gospel. One man had indeed died so the people could be gathered. His death did not save a political borders, but it drew together people from every nation. It merged two distinct clusters, Jew and Gentile, into a single body that expanded far beyond the reach of the Roman Empire. By attempting to preserve their earthly status through political maneuvering, the religious leaders lost the very thing they tried to protect, while God's spiritual plan moved forward through their own actions. This history holds a mirror to our own lives. We often fall into the same trap as the first-century crowds, gauging the success of our faith by how it affects our outward circumstances. We treat God as a consultant for our material goals, obsessing over career breakthroughs, our financial status, and personal timelines, while expecting Him to simply endorse our plans. When our focus shifts entirely to these external metrics, we adopt the same anxieties and behaviors as the secular world. We lose the set-apart quality that is supposed to define a follower of Christ. Following the Shepherd King requires more than just acknowledging a story. It requires abandoning the pursuit of earthly dominance and embracing the humility he modeled on that donkey.